Today we are taking a really fascinating and I think often provocative look at the foundational principles of financial literacy.
We are. We're diving into the core lessons from that classic work, detailing the lessons learned from two profoundly different father figures.
Right. And this isn't just about reviewing a book. It's more about decoding the financial DNA of success based on this really clear premise.
It's a clash of worldviews. You have the high-earning, highly educated perspective on one side.
It's a traditional path.
The traditional path, exactly. And on the other side, you have this wealth-building entrepreneurial mindset. Our deep dive today it's focused on achieving nothing less than a complete shift in how you view your personal economy.
Yeah, a total paradigm shift. And the sources we've pulled together, they lay out a very clear mission for us and for you listening. It's to assume total command over your financial future.
And that kind of control, it doesn't come from a new budgeting app or some hot stock tip. It begins with understanding these key but often really confusing differences in how the rich and the poor, and especially the middle class, approach money, work, and I think most critically, their mindset.
The initial setup in the sources is just the perfect conflict. It drives the whole philosophy.
It really does. You have these two fathers. Both are successful, charismatic, incredibly hardworking men, both earning what most people would consider impressive incomes.
But their financial outcomes couldn't be more different.
Diametrically opposed. One, highly educated, a brilliant academic. He dies leaving behind bills. His family has to keep working just to stay afloat.
Yeah, the other.
The other, despite lacking that formal university education, he dies leaving millions. Millions that benefited not just his family, but charities, his community.
A legacy.
And you can see that divide reflected in the advice they gave.
Oh, completely. The educated father, he advocated for that traditional industrial age path. You know the one.
Go to school, get good grades.
Get a safe, secure job, prioritize stability, climb the corporate ladder, save your money.
Standard advice. It is. But the rich father, he pushed for a fundamentally different kind of study. He believed financial principles aren't learned in a classroom. They're learned through real-world systems, through entrepreneurship and through managing risk.
And the author notes how painful that choice was, choosing between these two mentors, both of whom he loved and respected.
It had to be. But the decision to follow the rich father's path, even though on the surface it seemed so much riskier, that decision determined the rest of his life.
It marked the true, and I'm guessing often uncomfortable, beginning of his financial education.
Exactly. And that journey, it starts by confronting what is probably the biggest lie we're all told about work.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The central foundational thesis of this entire philosophy. It was so radical that when the book was first presented, 20 years ago, publishers just rejected it outright.
They did. Because the lesson is deceptively simple, but it just grates against everything we're taught.
And that lesson is?
The rich do not work for money.
Right. And that phrase, it instantly clashes with every piece of societal programming we receive.
Of course it does. If you're a conscientious, ethical person, you're told you must work hard for a salary. That's the definition of success, of contributing.
It's the whole Protestant work ethic.
It is. But the rich father insisted that working hard for money is precisely the trap. The rich don't do that. They focus on building systems and acquiring assets that enable money to work for them.
And what's truly fascinating here, and what really gives this deep dive its teeth, is that modern economic data, it doesn't just support this thesis.
It screams it. I mean, we are not talking about some historical anomaly or a fringe theory. This is baked into the numbers.
So what does the data show?
Well, if you look at U.S. national income trends, the picture is just stark. The sources highlight that between 1993 and 2010, over 50% of the entire increase in national income.
Over half.
Over half went straight to the wealthiest 1% of the population.
And for anyone thinking, okay, that was just a pre-recession thing, you have to look at the period right after the 2008 crash.
Exactly. Economists at the University of California, Berkeley, they analyzed the period between 2009 and 2012, the so-called recovery, and they found that an astonishing 95% of all income growth during that recovery
95%?
went straight to the top 1%.
That's almost unbelievable.
It provides the concrete evidence for the rich dad's more abstract lesson. Yeah. The massive surge in income, it is not going to employees who trade their time for a salary. It doesn't matter how high that salary is.
Right.
It's going to the entrepreneurs, the business owners, the investors. It's going to the people who own the systems and the assets that generate revenue, whether they're physically present or not.
So it's the ultimate proof that Just relying on a high salary, what we often call the W-2 path, is an increasingly difficult, if not, impossible route to true, lasting financial freedom.
You're competing against economic forces that are fundamentally designed to reward ownership, not labor.
It's a rigged game, in a way.
Well, it's a game with specific rules. And when you work for money, you're placing yourself at the mercy of your employer for stability and the government for taxation. We'll get into taxes later, but the simple fact is, when money works for you, the power, the control, and crucially, the tax advantages are firmly in your hands.
This shift in external focus, who you work for, it seems fundamentally connected to a massive shift in your internal dialogue.
It has to be.
And this brings us to what the source calls the can't buy that trap.
Yes. The educated father, when he was faced with an expensive item or just a desire for something he didn't have the cash for, he would often say, I can't buy that.
Which is what most of us say.
It is. But that phrase is a financial killer. The rich father actually prohibited those words because, as he put it, they shut down the brain. He called it mental laziness.
Mental laziness.
Think about it. When your brain is told, I can't, the creative search for a solution is over. The conversation is terminated. It's an admission of a permanent limitation, not a statement of a temporary circumstance.
So what was the alternative?
Instead, the rich father insisted on asking, what can I do to buy that? Or how can I afford that?
So it's a question, not a statement.
It's a question. And that simple linguistic shift, it forces the brain, which is, it's the most powerful computer in the world, to keep working, to keep thinking, searching, and creating options.
The analogy in the source is really good here. It's like physical conditioning.
It's a perfect analogy. If you constantly default to, I can't run a marathon, your body never prepares. You've already decided the outcome. But if you ask, how can I run a marathon? Your mind immediately starts calculating steps. It thinks about training schedules, nutrition, resources.
It starts problem solving.
One parent put his brain to sleep regarding money by constantly defaulting to limitation. The other constantly exercised his mind with challenges, which led to increased financial strength over time. It's literally financial fitness.
And this foundational lesson, this ability to manage your emotional response and your internal dialogue, it was taught through a pretty painful and drawn-out real-world test.
The 10 cents per hour test, yes.
This anecdote just perfectly encapsulates the rich dad's philosophy of learning through friction, through actual experience.
It does. The author and his friend Mike, they go to work for Mike's dad, the rich dad, and the job is just horrible.
Dusting cans
in Mrs. Martin's convenience store for 3 hours every single Saturday for the pittance of 10 cents an hour.
You can just imagine the frustration building up.
Mm-hmm.
After 3 weeks of this low-wage, dirty, monotonous work, the young author was just completely fed up.
He felt exploited, undervalued, he wanted to quit, and he was so furious he apparently stomped into the rich dad's office to confront him.
And then was made to wait.
And then was forced to sit in the waiting room while the rich dad intentionally ignored him for 45 minutes.
That's a power move.
It was an intentional delay. The rich dad was letting the boys stew in their emotions, the anger, the frustration, that feeling of being exploited, because that is the exact emotional state that traps millions of adults their entire lives.
He wanted them to observe it, not just react to it.
Precisely. He wanted them to observe the biggest lesson of life. That working hard for low wages, clinging to this illusion of job security, waiting all year for a short 3-week vacation and a meager retirement package, that is the path most people choose.
That emotional response is the fuel of the rat race.
That's the fuel. The sources define the rat race not just as working hard, but as this perpetual cycle driven by 2 primary emotions, fear and desire.
Fear of not being able to pay the bills.
That drives you to accept a low wage or a job you hate.
And then desire for things, a new phone, a bigger car, a nicer house.
That drives you to take on debt and inflate your expenses the second you get a raise. You're always chasing.
So the rich dad was training them to observe and control those emotions. And the real test came after they finally confronted him with all their anger.
It did. The rich dad very calmly offered them a raise from 10 cents to 25 cents an hour.
A pretty big jump, percentage-wise.
A huge jump, plus, slightly increased benefits.
And the breakthrough moment, the real lesson, was that they refused the raise.
They refused it. They finally understood that the real lesson wasn't about the rate of their pay. It was about the fundamental structure of work. They had moved beyond the mindset of working for money.
They realized that higher pay just makes the cage of the rat race bigger and maybe a little more comfortable, but it doesn't offer freedom. It's still a cage.
That refusal was their first step toward genuine financial intelligence. Learning to use their emotional energy, their desire, their drive, to think creatively about solutions instead of just reacting emotionally in panic or greed.
Which is what keeps the donkey running after that financial carrot on a stick.
Exactly. And the culmination of that lesson was their comic book venture. They started their own little library using discarded comics from Mrs. Martin's store.
So they stopped working for the rich dad for free.
And instead, they were in business for themselves. They were learning to make money work for them through, a simple form of intellectual property and system building.
And that realization, that freedom comes from building systems, not from earning higher salaries. That's the perfect transition to what the source calls rule number 1.
That leads us directly into the cornerstone of wealth, what the source calls the golden rule of financial literacy, rule number 1. You must understand the profound difference between an asset and a liability.
And you must exclusively buy assets.
Exclusively buy assets.
It sounds so simple. I mean, deceptively so. Yet this is the exact point where the author admits many highly educated adults get completely tripped up.
They do. The rich dad's observation was, the rich acquire assets. The middle and poor classes acquire liabilities, but they think they're assets.
And this conceptual confusion, it's not entirely their fault. It's often fostered by the professionals they trust.
That's a huge point. Bankers, real estate agents, even some accountants, they often operate within that middle-class mindset and reinforce the idea that, good debt is necessary for success.
So true financial proficiency isn't just about being able to read the raw numbers on a balance sheet.
No, it's about reading the story those numbers tell, specifically the story of cash flow. Where is the money coming from and where is it going?
Okay, so let's go back to basics. The definitions the rich dad created for 2 9-year-olds, which are, frankly, essential for every adult.
They're brilliant in their simplicity. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket with minimal work.
And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket.
That's it. The direction of the cash flow is the only thing that matters in these definitions.
So let's use the cash flow diagrams he designed to trace the financial path of the 3 main groups. This is where the story really unfolds.
Okay, starting with the poor person's cash flow. This is the most straightforward.
Income comes in.
From a job or salary, their only source. And it flows straight out as expenses, taxes, rent, food, transport, clothing.
The balance sheet, which is the list of things they own versus what they owe, is often empty.
Or zeroed out. Because they're living strictly paycheck to paycheck, they're stuck in a cycle of revenue flowing directly into consumption. There's no engine for growth.
Okay, now the one that traps most people, the middle-class cash flow.
The trap, yes. This is where the confusion is maximized. Their income, also primarily salary-driven, flows out to acquire what they often believe are markers of success or even assets.
But according to this definition, they're overwhelmingly liabilities.
Overwhelmingly. Car financing, credit card debt, student loans, and, critically, the mortgage on their large primary residence.
And here's the key mechanism of the trap, right? The payments on all these shiny liabilities, they then become major fixed expenses.
Exactly. Taxes, loan payments, car insurance, home insurance, maintenance. This perpetual obligation inflates their expense column to meet and often exceed their rising income.
Which forces them to work harder and longer just to service the debt they took on to look successful.
They're running faster and faster on the rat race treadmill, but they're mistaking speed for progress. They're not actually going anywhere.
Okay, so contrast that with the rich person's cash flow.
It's an entirely different engine. Their asset column is the star of the show. Those assets generate enough passive income to not only cover their living expenses, but also to produce significant excess cash flow.
And that surplus
Is then systematically reinvested right back into the asset column, which makes the asset column grow, which makes it generate even more income.
It's a virtuous cycle.
It's an exponential wealth machine. They are literally getting richer while they sleep.
The diagrams are so powerful because they visualize the entire cycle. And that visualization brings us to, I think, the most controversial point of the entire philosophy. It's a point I really think we need to challenge about.
I know where you're going.
Your primary residence is not an asset.
This is the argument that gets the most pushback.
Absolutely. Particularly in cultures where homeownership is seen as the ultimate symbol of security and success.
The American dream.
The American dream.
Mm-hmm.
But the rich dad was very, very firm on this. For most people, their primary home is a liability, even if its market value appreciates over time.
Okay, but wait a minute. That's a hard pill to swallow. Isn't a home an investment? You get tax deductions on the mortgage interest, and historically, property values do go up. Isn't the psychological security of owning your own four walls worth something financially?
The rich dad's definition is brutal, but it's clean. An asset puts money in your pocket. A house, while potentially rising in paper value, takes money out of your pocket every single month.
Through the mortgage, property tax?
Insurance, maintenance, utilities, maybe HOA fees.
Yeah.
Yes, you get some tax deductions, but those deductions only mitigate the overall net cash flow out. You are still spending hundreds or thousands of dollars every month just to maintain this liability. So you're arguing that the cash flow direction is the only thing that matters in this definition, not the potential paper appreciation.
That's the core of his argument. And the 2008 housing crisis proved, in the most painful way possible, that paper appreciation is not a guarantee.
That's a very good point.
The sources noted that many homes in 2017 were still valued below their 2007 peak, a full decade later. That illustrates that a home's perceived value is not a guarantee of wealth creation.
And furthermore, the trap gets deeper. If you get a raise at your job, what do most middle-class people do?
They buy a bigger house, which is a bigger liability. It requires a larger mortgage, higher property taxes, more expensive insurance, more maintenance. It just sinks them deeper into the rat race.
So the alternative here isn't necessarily to rent forever, though. It's about approaching real estate differently.
Exactly. The rich person's approach is this. If you want a nice, big house, you first focus on buying income-generating assets.
Like rental properties, dividend stocks, a business.
Intellectual property, whatever. Assets that generate enough passive income to cover the mortgage, the taxes, and the maintenance of your dream house.
So the house itself is still recognized as a liability in your mind.
Yes, but it's paid for by your wealth engine, not by your salary, not by your time.
That shifts the entire game. Instead of working harder and longer, your sweat equity to pay for an expensive liability, you focus your energy on building systems, your assets, that cover those lifestyle costs automatically.
That distinction is monumental. It's the difference between working for the money to pay for the liability and letting the money from your assets work to pay for the liability. It's a total change in who or what is doing the work.
And this profound distinction between managing assets and just chasing a salary, it leads us directly to the next crucial difference.
The difference between your profession and your business.
It's a distinction most people just completely fail to make. Your profession is what you study, it's what you get paid for. You might be a software engineer, a journalist, a doctor.
But your business, in this philosophy, is what generates income independently of your physical presence. And the tragedy, according to the rich dad, is that most people spend their entire lives diligently minding other people's businesses and making them rich.
You work for the owner of the company. You pay the bank's mortgage. You pay the government's taxes. Everyone else gets paid from your labor before you do.
Exactly. The path to genuine financial security demands that, regardless of your W-2 job, you must focus on building and expanding your own business. And that business is explicitly defined by your asset column, not your income column.
Your job pays the bills.
Your assets build your freedom.
This is perfectly illustrated by that famous anecdote about Ray Kroc and McDonald's.
The McDonald's revelation, yes. Kroc, the man who built McDonald's into this global giant, was speaking to a group of very sharp MBA students at the University of Texas. And he asked them a simple question. What is my business?
And they just laughed. They thought it was a trick question or a joke.
They did. One student, with a bit of that youthful arrogance, finally shouts out, "Ray, is there anyone in the world who doesn't know you are in the hamburger business?"
And Kroc's reply is just pure genius.
He smiles and drops the bomb. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate."
And that just reveals the entire power of the asset column strategy. Kroc's profession, his day-to-day work, was the operational side.
Selling hamburger franchises, ensuring quality control, marketing, all of that. But his true business, his wealth-building system, was acquiring the land underneath those franchises.
The franchisees pay for the land or the real estate, which is owned and controlled by the Kroc organization.
The hamburger is just the hook to get the franchisee to pay the rent on Kroc's real estate. And the data today confirms this foundational focus. The material points out that McDonald's is, remarkably, the world's largest individual landowner.
It owns more real estate than the Catholic Church.
Which is just staggering. Ray Kroc never, ever lost sight of his primary business, accumulating valuable, income-generating real estate assets.
Now, the sources are careful to clarify that minding your own business does not mean you necessarily have to rush out and start a volatile new company.
No, that's a really important clarification. Starting a company is notoriously risky. The stats are brutal. 9 out of 10 fail within 5 years. And of the one that survives, 9 out of 10 of those survivors fail within the next 5.
So the goal isn't necessarily to become an entrepreneur in the classic sense.
The goal, rather, is to become an investor. It's about acquiring and building passive assets. The Rich Dad outlines several classes of these real assets,
Stocks and bonds,
which is investing in other people's well-run systems.
income-generating real estate,
Rental properties, commercial buildings,
notes and financial instruments, royalties from intellectual property.
like books, music, patents, and even things like precious metals. These are the engines that put money in your pocket while you're not actively working.
And there's a rigid discipline required for managing that wealth engine.
A very strict rule. Once money successfully enters your asset column, you never let it leave.
It becomes your employee.
It becomes your most diligent, hardworking employee. It works silently 24 hours a day, compounding its growth for you and for your future generations.
And this rule is specifically designed to combat the temptation for immediate gratification.
Which is what fuels the middle class's debt cycle. If you harvest your asset column to pay for consumption, you are starving your financial employee. This emphasis on long-term compound growth and disciplined reinvestment is the secret sauce of exponential wealth creation.
Which brings us to how the rich approach consumption, specifically luxuries. The difference between buying a luxury car on credit and buying it with cash flow.
It's a night and day difference in mindset. The poor and middle class, they buy luxuries first. They see something they want, and they fund it with credit or debt.
Meaning they're paying for that item with their future earnings, or essentially with their sweat equity, their future time.
Exactly. The rich buy luxuries last. They only acquire those expensive items, the big house, the sports car, the exotic vacation, after their asset column has grown large enough to generate more than enough passive income to cover the purchase entirely.
The author talks about buying his Porsche.
He does. He used the cash flow from his assets to buy it. That means he didn't have to sacrifice his working capital or dip into his salary to acquire it. It was an earned reward from a successful system, not a debt taken on by a hardworking employee.
Now we get into the really sophisticated area of financial intelligence, the part that provides massive leverage for the rich, but is completely opaque to the average employee.
The tax game.
And this goes right back to that historical misunderstanding the educated father had, what the sources call the Robin Hood fallacy.
It's a fascinating deep dive into history. Historically, taxes in both the U.S. and England, they weren't a constant. They were often temporary levies, implemented only to fund specific emergencies.
Usually wars.
Usually wars, yes. Permanent income tax only came to England in 1874, and to the U.S. with the 16th Amendment in 1913.
And these taxes, they gained popular support because they were initially pitched as a way to punish the rich.
It was a populist message. The Robin Hood economic theory used the power of the government to take from the rich and distribute it to the poor. And the masses, understandably, voted for this legislation, believing they were targeting the wealthy.
But the sources make it crystal clear that the rich, because they possess financial intelligence and power, do not end up shouldering the primary tax burden.
Not at all. As the government's appetite for revenue grew and grew, taxes were inevitably extended down to lower and lower income levels.
So who pays for the poor?
The middle class, especially the high-earning, educated professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, the highly paid executives, they end up paying the majority of the tax bill, essentially financing government programs.
And this is the critical point.
Yeah.
The wealthy don't just sit still and accept higher taxes.
No, they respond. They use their resources, their money, their political influence, their teams of highly skilled accountants and lawyers to change the laws, to create exemptions, or to leverage existing legal loopholes that favor their financial structures.
And their key tool in this game is the corporation.
The corporation, or the legal entity. It's a structure that became popular centuries ago during the Age of Sail, specifically to limit the risk to an investor's personal assets in these very dangerous shipping ventures.
And crucially, a corporation isn't a big building. It's just a legal document.
It's a file folder in a government office, but it's a legal document that allows for drastically different tax treatment than an individual W-2 salary worker receives.
This contrast is the heart of the tax game. Let's break down the difference in cash flow for an employee, let's call them the E quadrant, versus a business owner or investor, the D and I quadrants.
Okay, the standard employee's cash flow follows a very rigid and disadvantageous sequence. Step 1, they earn a salary.
Step 2.
Step 2, they pay taxes, often 30, 40, 50% or more, and it's deducted at the source before they even see the money.
And step 3, they get to spend what is left.
They're trying to build a life on the remainder after the government and their employer have already taken their share.
Now contrast that with the owner of a corporation.
The sequence is completely inverted and far more advantageous. Step 1, the corporation earns income.
Step 2, the corporation spends. It pays all of its legitimate business expenses, supplies, salaries, travel, business meals, vehicle leases, research development.
All of that happens before the government calculates the tax.
So step 3 is the corporation pays taxes, but only on what's left over, the net profit.
The difference is monumental. The rich are financially rewarded for their spending and their investment efficiency. Every legitimate business expense is essentially a pre-tax deduction.
Meanwhile, the employee is penalized for earning more, they get pushed into higher tax brackets, and virtually all of their spending, their mortgage, their car, their food, is done with dollars that have already been taxed.
The system is designed to incentivize the creation and expansion of businesses and assets. That's the game.
And beyond that basic cash flow difference, the corporate structure allows access to specific legal tools that dramatically accelerate wealth building, tools most employees don't even know exist.
The source provides the perfect, powerful example of the Section 1031 exchange.
Okay, break that down for us.
The 1031 exchange is an IRS mechanism specifically for real estate investors. It allows an investor to sell an investment property and defer paying any capital gains tax, provided they reinvest the entire profit into a like-kind investment property of equal or greater value within a specific time frame, usually 180 days.
The power here isn't just about deferring tax on one transaction.
No, it's the ability to compound your wealth across decades, tax-free. An investor can swap properties repeatedly, rolling their massive capital gains and appreciation into ever larger and more valuable properties.
And they don't pay taxes on that growth until when?
Until the entire asset is eventually sold and liquidated for cash, which could be decades later. Or it can even be passed on to heirs at what's called a stepped-up basis, which can eliminate the capital gains tax entirely.
This is a massive missed opportunity for anyone who isn't familiar with these rules.
Huge. The investor who doesn't use the 1031, they pay immediate capital gains tax. That significantly shrinks the pool of money they have available for their next investment. The investor who does use the 1031 continues to compound their wealth on the gross amount, accelerating their journey to financial freedom exponentially.
So the conclusion here is crystal clear. If you rely on working for money, you're giving immense financial power and control to your employer and to the government.
But if you prioritize building assets and using legal structures that force money to work for you, the power shifts back into your hands, allowing you to legally structure your earnings to minimize your tax burden.
That is financial intelligence in action.
And understanding the tax laws, the cash flow diagrams, that's the technical side of the equation. But the Rich Dad's philosophy really emphasizes that the single greatest barrier to financial success is internal. It's psychological.
The main hurdle being the fear of loss.
Yes, it's that paralyzing anxiety that stops most people from ever even starting, from ever taking a calculated risk.
And everyone has it. It's not like the rich are fearless.
Not at all. Everyone experiences fear and insecurity. Even the ultra-rich worry about losing the wealth they already have. The difference is how they manage that emotion.
And the Rich Dad's observation on this was pretty blunt.
It was. He said, many people don't win financially because the pain of losing money is greater than the joy of being rich.
They're operating with a defensive mindset.
Exactly. They play not to lose instead of playing to win. They prioritize security above opportunity, which often results in a safe, conservative, and balanced portfolio that generates minimal, non-wealth building gains. Maybe it keeps up with inflation, if you're lucky.
So how do you overcome that? The sources suggest adopting what they call the Texan attitude.
Right. The Rich Dad really admired the Texan spirit of boldness. His advice was, if you're gonna break, break big.
Go big or go home?
Basically. Texans are known for taking large, ambitious risks. And critically, they don't hide their failures. They are inspired by defeat. They view failures like the Alamo not as shameful endpoints, but as rallying cries for the next bigger attempt.
This just reinforces that classic wisdom that failure isn't the opposite of success.
It's a necessary part of the success process. You have to fall off the bike when you're learning to ride. John D. Rockefeller understood this perfectly. He said, "I always tried to turn every failure into an opportunity."
The risk-averse person sees only loss.
The financially intelligent person sees only a lesson. They see data they can use for the next attempt.
And the rich dad warned that the issue with overly safe investments is that they're often, was the term, airtight.
Airtight. So safe that the potential for gain is minimal. Playing it too safe results in paralysis. In the real world of deals and opportunities, the bold person who takes a calculated risk and acts, they often succeed, while the overly cautious analyst gets stuck in analytical paralysis.
Studying every single detail until the opportunity is long passed them by.
Exactly. The next psychological barrier is overcoming laziness, but not in the way you'd think. Specifically, what the rich dad called the busy trap.
This feels like a profoundly modern problem.
It really is. The most common form of laziness isn't sitting on the couch doing nothing. It's keeping constantly, frenetically busy.
Working 60 hours a week, watching hours of TV, shopping, constantly scrolling social media.
All to avoid facing something genuinely important, like managing your finances or questioning the direction your life is actually heading.
So this frantic busyness, it's a form of avoidance.
It's avoidance disguised as productivity. The cure for this kind of mental laziness, he says, is a strategic infusion of ambition.
Which is often criticized as greed.
Right, but he saw it as a necessary ingredient for growth. We go right back to that internal dialogue shift. When the mind is lazy, it says, "I can't afford that." That's the end of it.
But the ambitious, financially engaged person asks,
How can I afford that? That question forces the brain, the financial genius inside all of us, to fire up and find creative solutions. Ambition, when it's used constructively, overcomes that mental lethargy and it drives action.
okay, the third barrier, overcoming bad habits. This one focuses on payment discipline.
And the contrast between the two fathers' methods here is just stark. The educated, poor dad, he operated out of a sense of deep responsibility. He paid everyone else first.
The taxes, the bills, the creditors.
Everyone got their money. And he paid himself, meaning his savings or investments last, if there was anything left over.
Which there often wasn't.
Right. The rich dad did the precise opposite. He paid himself first. He made sure his investment column, his asset column was fed, even if he was momentarily short on cash for his bills or his taxes.
That sounds incredibly stressful. And a little irresponsible.
It is counterintuitive and highly stressful. And that was the point. That self-imposed pressure from creditors and the government, who would soon start making noise, that became his primary external motivator.
So the stress forced him to be more creative.
It forced him to become more active, smarter, and more creative immediately to find solutions, new deals, new sources of income to cover the shortfall before the situation became serious.
He said he'd rather have the creditors temporarily shouting at him.
Then let himself off the hook by delaying his own investments. It's a mechanism for extreme self-discipline. It forces innovation under pressure.
But there's a huge warning here.
A huge warning. This strategy only works if you have two things: low to zero consumer debt and deep financial savvy. It's about control and motivation, not about being irresponsible. You have to leverage the pressure to create new wealth, not just panic and take on high-interest credit card debt.
Okay, finally, the last barrier. Overcoming arrogance.
The rich dad viewed arrogance as the armor people wear to mask deep ignorance.
It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. He noted that every time he himself was arrogant, believing what I don't know isn't important, he lost money. He saw highly educated professionals, accountants, stockbrokers, lawyers use arrogance to win arguments and intimidate others, but it was just masking the fact that they were often clueless about the dynamic, systemic workings of money and wealth creation outside their narrow specialty.
So what's the solution?
The solution to ignorance is, of course, education and humility. When you're ignorant about a subject, you have to seek out an expert, study the market, read the books.
And the rich dad's crucial mantra here was,
the skeptics criticize, and the winners analyze. Analysis opens your eyes to opportunities that the critic, blinded by their own presumed knowledge and their arrogance, completely misses.
so understanding and overcoming those psychological barriers is one half of the equation. The other half is execution.
It is. Financial intelligence isn't just a mindset, it's about action. And wealth generation is the synergy of four key technical competencies.
Right.
When you combine them, the ability to create wealth becomes exponentially easier.
Okay, what are the four?
Number one is accounting. This is financial proficiency, the ability to read and understand financial statements, especially a cash flow statement, not just a profit and loss statement.
Number two.
Investment. This is the science of how to make money work efficiently for you. Strategies, risk assessment.
Number three.
Understanding marketing sales. This is crucial. It's about communication, the ability to overcome the fear of rejection, to negotiate, and to move a product or an idea effectively.
And finally, number four.
Law. A working knowledge of tax rules and corporate structures, just like we explored in the tax game section.
And the problem facing the educated class is often deep specialization.
Exactly. They often become masters of one domain, say accounting, but they lack the generalist skills to integrate all four. If you're a brilliant investor but you can't negotiate or sell your vision, you will struggle.
The sources have a sharp illustration of this synergy gap.
The example of the talented artist. This individual inherited some money and used it to launch his career. He produced incredible works of art.
But then he immediately spent his entire inheritance on expensive magazine advertising.
And generated zero returns. He then blamed the advertisers, calling them imposters.
His art was the good hamburger, but he lacked the system.
He lacked the marketing and sales skills to move it. He was technically excellent, but commercially illiterate. He focused on his profession, creating art, but failed at the business of selling art.
And this reinforces why the McDonald system, though you could argue it doesn't make the best burger.
It wins universally because it has an impeccable business system rooted in these four competencies. It excels at cash flow management, system administration, and people coordination.
So the advice then is to focus on learning a little about a lot, the opposite of traditional academic specialization.
It is. The author, who was a journalist, was advised to take copywriting and sales courses, not because she needed to be a full-time salesperson, but because the ability to sell, to communicate value, to market. That's crucial for turning any technical expertise, whether it's a novel or a specialized consulting service, into a bestseller.
And we are firmly in the information age now. Money itself is often just an idea, a deal, an agreement solidified by legal terms.
That's right. The rich don't just work for money or save it. They actively invent money through intelligence and action. Millions can be made out of nothing, meaning with no large initial cash deposit, through smart deals that leverage existing assets and, most importantly, superior information.
The quintessential example of inventing money is that Phoenix real estate deal detailed in the sources.
It's the perfect case study. It shows the synergy of all four competencies in action. So the author found a small house that was worth about $75,000, but it was being sold in a depressed local market because the owner needed cash immediately.
And the seller's price was just $20,000.
A huge discount. Now, he didn't have the full $20,000, so he leveraged his existing financial relationships and borrowed a $2,000 down payment along with $200 in processing fees. He was now in the process of acquiring the property.
So he's using his knowledge of financing, of law.
Exactly. And while that acquisition was processing, he immediately leveraged his marketing and sales skills. He advertised the $75,000 house for $60,000, and the hook was owner financing and no down payment required.
Which would attract a lot of buyers who couldn't qualify for a traditional mortgage.
He found a buyer very quickly who was thrilled by that low barrier to entry. The buyer paid $2,500 in processing fees,
which immediately covered the author's initial $2,200 outlay. He was already whole.
He was whole. And here is the kicker. Instead of getting $60,000 in cash, which would have been a great profit, he did something smarter. He secured a $40,000 promissory note asset from the buyer.
A note that generated $4,000 per year in passive cash flow.
For a total time commitment of about 5 hours of work.
So he turned $2,200 of borrowed money
into an income-generating asset worth $40,000, which provided passive income year after year. He literally manufactured a new asset and a new revenue stream from superior information, low capital, and strategic action.
This just emphasizes that critical difference between the doer and the waiter. You have to act on the information.
You have to act. The rich dad always stressed, luck is created. People who wait for the right time or wait for every single variable to be perfect, for all the traffic lights to turn green, they will wait forever.
Action. Even imperfect action always beats inaction.
Always. And this entire process of learning, taking risks, and leveraging information, it should be treated like a game. The sources reference the game Cash Flow, which was designed precisely to help players learn how money works.
It lets them make mistakes with game money.
It does, and they get instant feedback, which removes that real-world fear of loss that paralyzes so many people.
And the winners in that game, and in life, are the ones who learn to recognize options, who are creative, and who take calculated risks.
It's a process of learning to see the world differently, learning to spot the deals that other people, trapped in their old mindsets, just walk right past. The process of learning and changing your internal framework, that's the greatest reward. It's far more valuable than just the accumulation of dollars.
Because, as the rich dad taught,
the path is the goal.
So, to wrap up this deep dive, let's just reiterate the central choice that defines your financial life.
It's a choice you make every single day with every dollar that passes through your hands.
If you choose to spend it all on immediate gratification, on consumption, you choose the path of poverty.
If you choose to spend it on liabilities, the expensive debt-fueled cars, the furnishings, the oversized house, you choose the middle-class rat race. You're forcing yourself to work harder and harder for diminishing returns.
But if you choose to invest that dollar first, if you choose to invest in your mind and acquire income-generating assets, you choose wealth. You choose control. You choose the opportunity to free yourself from that old industrial age cycle of trading your time for a paycheck.
And ultimately, the most powerful and scalable asset you will ever possess isn't a stock portfolio or a rental property. It is the mind that learns to see opportunities where other people only see obstacles and risk.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial point of evolution for all of us. Old ideas are your greatest liability.
Absolutely. The educated father clung to the idea of job security and traditional savings. These were ideas that were absolutely assets in the industrial age, but they are liabilities today in the face of exponential technological change and economic pressure.
We're in the information age. Change is the only constant. The person with timely, relevant financial information and the courage to act on it is the one who holds the key to wealth.
Clinging to outdated notions of security, of what a safe job is, that only guarantees stagnation.
So we leave you with the final provocative question built on everything we've explored today. What old ideas or mindsets are you holding on to about security, about the structure of work, about what an asset truly is, that were assets yesterday but have become your biggest liabilities today?
Will you embrace the continuous learning and critical analysis that financial intelligence offers, or will you cling to outdated notions of safety? The choice and the financial outcome is entirely yours.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope this exploration is giving you plenty of material to analyze.
Until next time.